Welcome back to Watch the Bookerman and to episode number 25 of Paul Heyman's TNA 2010. This is the second of the 4 weeks in the build to Slammiversary, the biggest pay-per-view of the year so far, second arguably only behind Bound for Glory. Some would say it's on an equal footing. I've always seen Bound for Glory as the big one, but Slammiversary, the anniversary show, is of course of great importance to us. We are back in the Impact Zone as we begin another key episode of TNA Impact. And the show begins with the guys who we saw at the end of last week's show standing tall, Bad Influence. They make their way down to the ring as a recap shows on the screen of their vicious assault on AJ Styles. We really want to hammer home what a significant moment this was, a big moment for Bad Influence. Once in the ring, Christopher Daniels takes delight in reliving AJ's suffering, saying that it was about time that AJ got taken down a peg or two. Daniels then spoke about how AJ Styles was a user of people, and as soon as he gets what he wants out of them, he casts them aside. He doesn't want to know them. He did it with Daniels, and the mouthpiece of Bad Influence says that he's had calls all week from various people in various stages of AJ Styles' life, thanking him for what he did. Kazarian says that AJ Styles pretends to be a family man, but he knows that that's a lie. Before Kazarian can delve any deeper into what he means by that, the comment pushes AJ Styles over the edge and he comes down to the ring to confront the trio. We didn't know whether AJ would be here again tonight after he said he was taking that step away, but it seems like the attack from Bad Influence, he couldn't leave it like that. He couldn't let them get that one over on him. When AJ Styles comes to the ring, Matt Morgan steps forward and threatens to boot his head off his shoulders once again. That was a big part of the attack last week. It was shown in that recap at the start of the show. Kazarian and Daniels held AJ up and then Morgan hit him with a violent carbon footprint. But AJ is not afraid despite being outnumbered. He's ready to go right now. But Daniels reminds him he can't. He isn't cleared to compete. After a moment, AJ Styles says that's fine because Daniels can say that he's been getting calls all week, but somebody in TNA did reach out to AJ Styles and he'll be here tonight and he's ready to fight Matt Morgan. So in the main event, we'll have Matt Morgan versus AJ's mystery opponent. It is somebody in TNA, so it's not a new debut. I don't know if it's a smart decision to keep it a mystery until the end, whether people might turn off because they don't know who it's going to be, or whether it'll keep people hooked. But either way, that's the way we're going with it. We will only know Matt Morgan's opponent just before that main event. He's the stand-in for AJ Styles. He would have competed, but he couldn't due to the injury that he sustained and the fact that he still isn't cleared. Gaining heat to the storyline, which I'm yet to change the name of. Fantastic performance from AJ. Kazarian improvising well. Morgan and Daniels both improvising well, as did AJ. Only the announcing letting us down, but I'm really happy with that segment. A good way to kick off this episode. As we then go into a match with Kazarian and Daniels, they stay at ringside. Matt Morgan also at ringside with them, but they defeat Amazing Red and Austin Creed in 9 minutes and 52. Kazarian pinning Amazing Red, not with a suicide solution, because that's his previous gimmick. I need to definitely have a little look at Kazarian's moveset there. Austin Creed, the weak link, with just a 43. Makes it a little bit difficult. I want to push him, but then when he's so far below everybody else, it really is difficult. Maybe it's destiny that he wasn't going to make it in TNA and he was better off elsewhere, but Daniel's standing out. Kazarian and Amazing Red both with 63s, and I'm happy with that to open the show. Continuing the storyline for some reason, I'm not really sure. I assume I've not aligned Morgan, Daniels and Kazarian correctly. I thought I had, but I mustn't have. Morgan joins them in the ring after the match. Bad Influence standing tall. Mauro and Taz speak about their impressive work with the group, really putting them over since their formation at Lockdown, and they question who AJ Styles has spoken to, who he feels is capable of coping with the power of Matt Morgan. It's going to be no easy feat to defeat Matt Morgan in that main event, and hopefully the person who has reached out to AJ Styles is up to that task. We then cut to a dark corner of the Impact Zone, a promo from Alyssa Flash and the newly debuted Mischief. They're shown side by side for the first time, and after Mischief attacked Daphne last week and seemingly replaced her as Alyssa Flash's associate, Flash makes it clear that it is Daphne out and Mischief in. Alicia does the majority of talking during the segment, Mischief's just being quite strange and just some facial expressions and maybe a few words here and there, but Alyssa Flash is here to challenge the New Age to a match at Slammiversary. Flash says that Jimmy Jacobs, Awesome Kong and Hamada had the chance to bring her into the group, but they made the wrong choice. Alyssa Flash is now going to prove them wrong at Slammiversary. They talk the new age about being the future of pro wrestling, but they're looking at it right now. At Slammiversary, Alyssa Flash and Mischief won the Knockouts Tag Team Championships. So Daphne helped Flash during this segment. So we'll say actually that maybe at the end of the segment we cut away and we see Daphne lurking in the background as if she's got something planned. She wasn't supposed to be on the screen, but that's the only way I can think to sort of level the fact that it says she helped her during the segment. We'll have her sort of doing the stalking in the background thing, not quite acting yet. It's a 49 rated segment, so it's decent. Probably keeps the storyline about where it was. As we go into the second match of the night, a Queen of the Mountain qualifier match that Sarita wins over Taylor Wilde, her tag team partner. It's an open, competitive match. The two of them going all out to have a great match, and it is decent at 57. I'm quite happy with that. A double underhook powerbomb though gives Sarita the victory and advances her to join that match. It's clear that Wilde is upset after the match, but they embrace in the ring with a hug. There's clearly no hard feelings. It was a completely fairly contested match. Sarita was just the better woman on the night, and she'll go on to Slammiversary to challenge for the Knockouts Championship. Her best friend fully endorses her to be the Queen of the Mountain. After that, discussion turns to D'Angelo Dineiro's call out of Mr. Anderson last week. As the commentators introduce footage of Mr. Anderson arriving at the building earlier today. He wasn't here last week, but he's definitely here this week. We have seen him at the entrance. Rob Terry carried Anderson's bags, and Anderson told the TNA cameras that he had nothing to say. Another man dressed in a suit was also seen entering the building with Anderson. He, however, covered his face with a folder to hide his identity. The reason for this guy being here was unknown, but following Homicide's departure, Taz wondered if Anderson was finding himself a new associate. We all know that he likes to use the numbers game, and perhaps that is it. It's a decent rated segment for what it is. I think it was only a minute long, maybe 2 minutes long, but advancing the Pope Has Spoken storyline. Another one I should probably change the name of, but that's just setting up the fact that later tonight, D'Angelo Dinero will call out Mr. Anderson, and we know for a fact that Mr. Anderson is here, so those two are going to have some kind of interaction one would expect. Jay Lethal is then interviewed in the back, and Jeremy Borash asks him about last week's defeat to Kazuchika Okada. We put over this as a big surprise to him. He was feeling so high from Sacrifice, and he's kicking himself that he lost that match. He feels like he's let himself down. He gives credit to Okada, and as somebody who's been underestimated his entire career, he's disgusted by his own complacency. But he says he won't make the same mistake twice. So there's a little bit, while he's praising Okada, of a undermining of his victory by saying, I probably would beat you if we went at it again. Nonetheless, we're saying that Jay Lethal, he's still being humble about it, and he's still accepting that Okada was the better man last week. Apologising for the interruption, Roderick Strong tells Jay Lethal not to sweat it and says that Okada is one of the best young wrestlers in the world. Lethal says that last week certainly proved that, but it isn't Strong that Jay Lethal wants to speak to. Jay says that as global champion, he wants to face the best, particularly with this title, from all around the world. And he requests that a translator is found for him next week. He doesn't want to speak to Roderick Strong about Kazuchika Okada. He needs to speak directly with Okada, so he wants next week somebody to come in who can speak both Japanese and English, and we'll get some kind of direct communication between the two. We've not really heard from Okada. He's said a couple of words here and there. Of course, he's not fluent in English yet, and next week we'll try and, well, I've got something planned that this sets up. It's a 51 rated segment, decent. Again, it's a mid-card storyline, so I'm not too worried about the fact that it's only in the 50s. As we end the hour with another really good match, 67 actually, it's a good match, gets the crowd buzzing. Shelley not really doing that well with a 56 rating, but he does pick up the victory in 14 minutes 22 with a sliced bread number 2. I think maybe that Alex Shelley is not a very good babyface, which maybe at this time he wasn't the best babyface, but I think he was always popular, penalised for a poor gimmick and inconsistency, so I'll definitely think about changing his gimmick in the next weeks and months. It's a steal the show match. Maybe the pressure of going all out didn't sit well with him. Sabin and Paul London were at ringside but didn't get involved, and Shelley picks up a decent win for him. He's then joined in the ring by Chris Sabin, and Sabin hands his partner a microphone and holds one himself as they address beer money. Sabin says that the two teams have a lot of history and everybody knows there's been an issue between them recently, but as much as they hate them, this isn't about personal feelings. This is and has always been about the World Tag Team titles. as the Motor City Machine Guns begin to make their challenge to Beer Money, suggesting a Motor City Machine Guns Beer Money 2 match at Slammiversary. The regrouped hooligans enter the ring. Kendrick and London, in sync, grab the microphones from Sabin and Shelley, and they say that they too challenge Beer Money to a rematch at Slammiversary. What happened at Sacrifice? It was the Machine Guns' fault. They would be the champions if it wasn't for Sabin and Shelley. The hooligans then drop the microphone and head up the ramp. The Machine Guns not looking impressed to have been interrupted by their rival contenders, but it has to be said, both teams have something of a claim. They're not particularly strong claims, I'd say. They've both been beaten by Beer Money. However it happened, it did happen. Beer Money perhaps justified in trying to look elsewhere, but both of these teams still very much on the trail of the World Tag Team titles. London and Shelley improvising well, the other two not really much to note, and it does lose heat to the storyline, only I think because it's worse than the match previously, but again, mid-card storylines, mid-cardish ratings. We then open up the second hour and Paul Heyman is in the ring and he introduces the challenger Bobby Lashley and the World Heavyweight Champion Kurt Angle, and then once they'd both made their entrances, he promotes them in his own unique way. Sometimes I try and think of how to hype people up via Paul Heyman, and I'll put details in, but nobody can do it quite like Paul Heyman can in reality. I'm thinking these promos that he's done in go-home segments for WrestleManias, he's the best at that, I think, of mythologizing and making wrestlers seem so much bigger than they are. This is exactly what we're trying to do with this match, create a big fight feel, and who better to do that than Paul Heyman himself. He calls them two of the greatest legitimate athletes in the history of pro wrestling, puts over their dedication, their competitiveness. There are not two fighters in this business more worthy of the Slammiversary main event than these two. Kurt Angle has his first comment saying that Bobby Lashley is barely even in this business these days. He's got one foot out the door, but the challenger has a response. Lashley says that that might be true, but even at 50%, he'd wrestle rings around Kurt Angle. At the minute, he is 100% focused on the World Heavyweight Championship, and he has been for the last few months. Kurt Angle disagrees with this and steps up to Lashley, tempting him to prove it. Angle actually makes the first move, pushing Lashley. The two then get in a scuffle, and Lashley manages to overpower Kurt Angle and take him down to the mat. Of course, Kurt Angle, an Olympic gold medalist in that field, is actually overpowered and taken down by Lashley. A shocking moment really to see Lashley out-wrestle Kurt Angle, something that not many people on the planet could do. Angle actually rolls out the ring to create space between the two. That's his way of getting away from it, almost accepting there that Lashley gets the better of him. Looking back as a smirking Paul Heyman stands beside Bobby Lashley. Heyman likes what he's seen. Of course, Kurt Angle is the standard of what a wrestler is in the business ever, I think, in terms of his actual legitimate wrestling ability. Bobby Lashley getting the better of him there, and Heyman happy to see that. That only adds more fuel to his fire. But from Kurt's perspective, on the outside, backing up the ramp, he sees Heyman stood slightly behind Bobby Lashley. The suspicions are raising up again that perhaps this is a setup, and Paul Heyman wants Bobby Lashley as the World Heavyweight Champion. Again, this is all unspoken, so it's not a authority struggle storyline in the sense that you're holding me down and you want a new face of TNA. It's not an authority angle in that sense, but it's just that there's the undertones there. Kurt Angle still doesn't fully trust that the man preaching about young and hungry and aggressive is fully on board with Kurt Angle as World Heavyweight Champion. We then come back to an extremely short match, Samoa Joe defeating Kiyoshi with a muscle buster. Kiyoshi's little more than a jobber, and it's just a way to get Samoa Joe back in the ring with a decisive win. Desmond Wolfe coming to the top of the ramp, holding a microphone in his hand. Samoa Joe makes it clear that he just wants to fight Wolfe. He tells him to shut up and get to the ring, but Wolfe has something to say. He tells Joe that he's not going to fight him. Right now, he is warning Samoa Joe to stay away from him. If he wants to fight Wolfe, he can go through Mr. Heyman, make an official challenge, and see if the match is made. Until then, Joe needs to stop harassing him, or he will be forced to take further action. Of course, this is ridiculous. Wolfe was the one who threw Samoa Joe off a stage. Joe comes back a week later wanting to fight him, as anybody would, and now Wolfe's claiming that Joe's obsessed with him and something needs to be done. That could result in Samoa Joe being banned from the Impact Zone because Wolfe would try and get a restraining order on him. Joe laughs at this idea and tells Wolfe that a restraining order is the only thing that would stop him from getting his ass kicked by Samoa Joe, but that's not going to happen, and Joe warns him, you, more than anybody, know exactly what I'm capable of. So it's a decent segment, again, 70 rating. Joe improvising well, advancing the storyline. I would like it to get a little bit more heat, but I'd say 70 is fair. It's upper mid card. Our show ratings at best are getting 79, so if this is getting a 70, it says that it's up there. It's not quite main event level, but it's an upper mid card feud, which I would say is a fair reflection of it right now. We want to get it higher up. We want to get both of these higher up because they're both so talented. But we'll see what we manage in the weeks building up to Slammiversary. Heading to the back, we get a short segment with the beautiful people Angelina Love and Velvet Sky, and they talk about the Queen of the Mountain ladder match at Slammiversary. Angelina makes it clear to Sky that the only thing that matters is her winning the title, and she asks Velvet to find out who her opponent is for the qualifying match. We've already had Madison Rayne qualified defeating Lacey Von Erich, Sarita qualified defeating Taylor Wilde, and Angelina Love knows that she's in a qualifying match next week, but she doesn't yet know who she will be facing. Velvet does exactly what Love tells her as Angelina watches back the footage of that match between Lacey Von Erich and Madison Rayne from last week. She's very, very serious about winning the Queen of the Mountain at Slammiversary, and she watches that footage as Velvet Sky goes to try and investigate and find out who else is in a match next week, or a qualifier next week. Lauren Brooke is then shown outside the locker room of Beer Money. As champions, they have their own locker, and she knocks on to speak with them. Beer Money were challenged by both the Motor City Machine Guns and the Hooligans earlier tonight, and Robert Roode has a response for both of them. The challenge of Motor City Machine Guns, rejected. Storm adds, sorry about your damn luck. The challenge of the Hooligans, rejected. And again, sorry about your damn luck. Not interested in either of the challenges. It's really as simple as that for them. They're rejecting both challenges, but they're confronted by the British invasion. Brutus Magnus says that he's seen Beer Money beat those two teams in recent weeks, but they haven't beaten the British invasion. They might want to mix it up with the best team on the planet, and Brutus Magnus would be more than happy to indulge them and face them at Slammiversary. Storm and Roode laugh at this challenge, return to the locker room. British Invasion's attempt to sneak in and take a title shot, not quite working out for them, but Brutus Magnus does improvise well, as does Robert Roode in their interaction. British Invasion obviously haven't done enough yet to be in consideration with a World Tag Team Championship shot, but they are trying to get themselves, manoeuvre themselves into that position. We then have another exhibition match really. The Knockouts champion doesn't really have much to do because these qualifiers are going on for the 4 women to face her in the Queen of the Mountain ladder match, so she just defeats newcomer Brooke in 3 minutes and 41. And we see actually that Tara's quite impressed with the fight that Brooke shows, despite it being a short, one-sided match. She's really not very good in the ring at the minute. We obviously need to build her overness up and also develop her skills in the ring, but Tara will get probably the best match you could hope for out of Brooke, and she stands tall after the match. The commentator's promoting the next title defence, the Queen of the Mountain at Slammiversary, which we all know about. As she celebrates her win, Sarah Del Rey appears on the screen, the first time she's been seen on Impact. We got the graphic at Sacrifice, but this is her formal introduction, and her competitive athlete gimmick gets a great rating as she says that she is the queen of wrestling, but she is also so much more. Sarah says that she has dedicated herself to training and competing and fighting for her entire life, and the Knockouts division isn't going to know what's hit it when she arrives in TNA. Sarah says that she isn't here to be a pretty face, and she isn't here to titillate Taz. She is here to fight, and when she steps in the TNA ring for the first time, she is going to change the game. So a very straight, clear, to the point promo from Sarah Del Rey. She's going to be, I know being a wrestler, the gimmick of being a wrestler isn't particularly interesting. Hopefully we can put more into a character than that, but at the minute she's introduced herself that she loves to fight, she loves to compete, she loves to train, she loves to get better, and well, that should serve her well in the Knockouts division. Really happy with how the gimmick starts. It'll give large penalties to charisma during matches and angles, which isn't great. Can be penalised for losing to comedy gimmicks, gimmicky and cartoon gimmicks, and can be penalised for using lengthy matches, and will be penalised for taking part in those. I'll probably forget all that, but it's good that I at least know it now. D'Angelo De Niro then makes his way down to the ring, and he's here for his scheduled call out of Mr. Anderson. Before he invites Mr. Anderson to join him, the Pope does a little bit of a preamble himself, talking about the disrespect Anderson has shown to TNA since coming to the company. He suggests that from the sounds of things, Anderson would be happy elsewhere, back in his comfort zone. The Pope says that he has embraced all the weird and wonderful things that make TNA TNA, that make it so unique, and he thinks that Mr. Anderson should do that. Pope is loving being in TNA since he embraced all those things, and he's advising Anderson that if he just does that himself, he could be a lot happier in this company instead of coming out here and complaining and trying to change it. Mr. Anderson does come out of the back as we expected. He's with Big Rob, but he stops at the top of the ramp. He does his elaborate entrance of, he puts his arm up and the microphone comes down, but when the microphone's in his hand to his mouth, he has nothing to say. From behind Anderson, Sheikh Abdul Bashir in a suit, I've just called him Bashir here because we will be changing his name. He comes down in a suit. It's a bit of a gimmick change for him. I've not actually changed the gimmick in game. I should have done that now. Next week, Bashir will introduce himself formally, so that'll be when I'll change the gimmick. But he comes down to the ring. He is now seemingly aligned with Mr. Anderson, and it's almost like he's his representative. Again, Anderson stands in complete silence as Bashir informs Pope that Anderson has nothing to say to him. All that, the idea is that Anderson, he's a bit of a troll really, isn't he? He's come out, he's done his elaborate entrance, he's brought Big Rob with him, and then he gets Bashir to come out, and all he's there for, all that, just to say that Anderson has nothing to say. So hopefully making the fans annoyed. It certainly makes Pope annoyed, and he shrugs and shakes his head. He can't believe the bullshit that Mr. Anderson's pulling, so he just clocks Bashir with a right hand. Pope stares down Anderson, who turns away, completely uninterested in the Pope's words. Bashir rolls out of the ring and leaves with Rob Terry and Mr. Anderson. Somebody said in a comment the other week that Bashir, Daivari and Mr. Anderson are like really close friends in real life, so I looked that up. I had heard something like that before, and I know that Daivari has said that he really enjoyed working with Paul Heyman. Mr. Anderson likewise. Bashir's had serious morale issues just because he's been booked really badly and used sporadically, but now we've got a little spot for him. It's not like he's going to get a big push. He's basically another guy who people feuding with Mr. Anderson can go through. Instead of Homicide, he is really just a replacement for that. But I think a suited Bashir, obviously it's got him heat for all these many years when he was in WWE playing the anti-American figure. Moving away from that, and hopefully it can be a bit more interesting. I didn't have any interest in pushing him as that kind of character. He was only ever going to be a jobber in that, whereas now I think it at least gives him something a little bit more interesting, hopefully. Mike Tenay then conducts a sit-down interview with Hernandez, and they discuss the words of Homicide from last week, his friendship with Amazing Red, and the change of attitude from Matt Morgan in recent months. Hernandez says that Amazing Red is a good kid, and he has the hunger to succeed that Hernandez had when he first stepped foot in TNA. Red just hasn't fully worked out how and where to channel all that energy yet. This brings him to Homicide, his former partner, who he was pissed off at for the longest time. He was thinking about when he screwed him over and turned on him, but right now he just feels sorry for him. Those personal petty squabbles, they seem insignificant, and wherever Homicide goes, whatever he needs to do right now, he hopes that his former friend gets his head straight. Not because he wants to reconciliate with him, their friendship is done, but Homicide's been going down a dangerous path for a long time, and Hernandez doesn't want to see the worst happen to him. This goes beyond their personal issues, and like he said, they're not going to be friends, but he encourages Homicide to reach out if he needs him. As for Matt Morgan, Hernandez is far from done with him too. He turned his back on Hernandez, and he's not going to forget that. Hernandez blames Matt Morgan for his recent struggles and vows that the time will come and revenge will be sweet. He challenges Matt Morgan to a match on next week's Impact, regardless of what happens in tonight's main event. Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian then join Matt Morgan for the main event, with Daniels cutting a promo on AJ Styles on his way down to the ring. Daniels finds it hard to believe that anybody would reach out to AJ Styles, because as far as he's concerned, everybody hates AJ Styles. He puts on this persona of being a man of the people, a locker room leader, but the fact is, when AJ isn't in a room, all people do is criticise him and hate on him. Whoever it is who extended the hand of friendship to AJ Styles must have either a deep-rooted jealousy of bad influence or be some low-down, moralless scumbag. Tonight, Matt Morgan is going to take that loser's head off, and nobody will hear from him, whoever it is, ever again. So really setting up that Daniels doesn't see anybody important or significant being willing to take this challenge. He says that everybody hates AJ Styles in the locker room, so whoever it is some loser just looking for some kind of spotlight and trying to get some shine off Bad Influence. Bad Influence then await the entrance of Matt Morgan's opponent, and he couldn't have been any more wrong. It's not the best segment. Daniels improvising well as we lead into the entrance of Jeff Hardy. So not a huge surprise, but it's somebody who hasn't been seen since the pay-per-view. He is back and he is on the side of AJ Styles. He's had his own issues with Bad Influence, minor run-ins really, nothing major. But like much of the roster, and like I've been saying over the last couple of months, there are murmurs of discontent with the way Bad Influence have been bullying people, and Jeff Hardy is one such person who is not happy with this. It's a match that had great heat and good wrestling. The whole point of the match is Jeff Hardy trying to chop down Matt Morgan. Morgan is of course stronger than him and does get some level of control, but when Jeff Hardy comes back and sets up for a swanton bomb, he's going to seal the deal in less than 10 minutes. But Chris Daniels throws him from the ring, Kazarian jumps in, the two men attack Jeff Hardy just like they'd attacked AJ Styles last week. Matt Morgan joins in, the ref is unable to control them, and all three members of Bad Influence are just piling onto Jeff Hardy in a gang-style assault. Really potentially dangerous for Jeff Hardy. Tonight wasn't about the victory for them, it's a DQ loss, but they are still sending a message, perhaps even more so, to AJ Styles and the rest of the TNA roster. Not only is AJ Styles being warned, if you step up and help AJ Styles, if you stand beside the Phenomenal One, this is what's going to happen. Kazarian Daniels then set up Jeff Hardy for the carbon footprint. This is becoming the signature move of the group. It was just put in as a throwaway last week, but I like the idea that we punctuate all their assaults with them each holding a hand of the opponent and Matt Morgan coming in with a violent carbon footprint. However, AJ Styles runs down from the back before the boot can happen. Far from 100%, he's hobbling as he has been for the last couple of months. He brings a baseball bat with him. Of course, it's 3-on-1 odds, so he had to bring an equaliser, and that's what he happened to find in the back. He runs down the ring, swinging recklessly at Daniels, Kazarian and Morgan. It's not like he has a particular target, it's just the idea that he wants to take somebody out with him if he's going to go against these odds, and he's completely flipped. Bad Influence see that and decide it is a good idea to back away. AJ Styles then checks on Jeff Hardy, who is not in the best condition, but he is able to be helped back to his feet. AJ Styles points the baseball bat at Bad Influence up on the ramp and tells them that they have made a huge mistake. We get the image of AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy, they're two very different people. The idea here is that they're two of the top guys in the company, but there's quite a juxtaposition in terms of their personality and their lifestyle. Two very different guys, two probably people who wouldn't get on and be close friends, but they have come together against the common enemy of Bad Influence, and it's maybe a bit of a dream team for some people. A decent segment again. The fact that Kazarian, Daniels and Morgan aren't that over is going to hurt this storyline. Not to underplay Bad Influence's part in this storyline, because like I've said, we are trying to get them over in the build to Slammiversary, but it's almost a knowing thing that they're there as the vehicle to put over this other team that we're assembling. AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy. Again, this is another one where I'm doing the spoiler before the match is announced, but it is going to be a 6-man tag at Slammiversary, and there will be a third man with AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy. Who that will be revealed over the course of the next couple of weeks. It's a decent show, 73. This time 2 months ago, I would have been really happy with that. Now it's about par for the course. Between 70 and 80, I'm going to be happy with. It's all about targeting a big rating for Slammiversary, and I think we will do that. I do think it will be better than the 79 that Sacrifice got. I think Lashley's in-ring performances haven't been great. I think he's been getting high 60s, maybe even mid 60s. Regardless of that, I do think that Kurt Angle can carry pretty much anybody to a good match. Amazing Red doesn't connect with the crowd. I actually read something the other day. I've been reading through old forums of TNA discussion forums from the time, so like going back 10 years in the archives, and seeing people talk about TNA and the news that was coming out at the time, stuff that I probably heard about back then because I was reading those websites, but some of these rumours will have been true, some of them won't have been. But I did read that Kurt Angle said at the time that Amazing Red could be the next Rey Mysterio. This was when he was scheduled to face him on Impact, so it was all about getting eyes on the show, but quite a stark contrast if that's what he's saying behind closed doors, that this kid will never connect. I think that Amazing Red's got potential. It is true that he's not that good on the microphone, or he's never been that comfortable on the microphone. The point I was making before that, I can't remember, but Slammiversary again coming soon. Hopefully that was another good episode, scheduled for 13 days, so I'll get through to that. Hopefully get that one out soon as well. I've really lost my train of thought there. Thank you for watching, and the card for Slammiversary really coming together, and hopefully people are enjoying the build to this big show.